In this video, I want to talk about my biggest mistakes I made while leveling up all the way up to Act 3 and things I really wish I knew from the start of the game that would not only make me further ahead, but increase my overall enjoyment of the game in general. For our first tip here, I wanted to talk about the quest marker on the map. As you can see right now, there's nothing showing on my map, but as I get closer to the quest marker here, when I reopen my map, you'll see a green thing. And this allows me to see what the quest objective is. I didn't notice at the start, and this would basically make me waste so much time running around the map if I was confused. Next, I want to mention, if you want to listen to like the lore in the game, when you open up the book, you can actually just hit space bar on your keyboard and it will allow it to autoplay while you walk around. This would have been huge because I didn't want to sit there and listen to the whole dialogue. I wanted to continue playing the game. It's like listening to an audiobook while you play, so I found this very useful, and I stopped skipping lore books once I figured this one out. I want to talk about how important runes are having in your gear. These are a big power spike, and I recommend as quickly as possible putting slots into all your gear. Another thing I want to mention is making sure you have the right charm for the boss you are fighting. It's always a good thing to keep all the charms that you can find into your storage here, so when you do come across a boss that uses a certain element and you are struggling, having the correct charm for that said boss is I found to be extremely valuable, not only in making the boss easier, but just allowing you to progress through certain areas that once again are more tailored towards one element. Having that charm for that area can come in really handy, so I recommend just keeping all your charms and using them depending on the area that you are in. Another thing you can do is you can click Control onto the hooded one. It'll immediately identify all your current items, and then what you can do after you do that is just walk over here to Survey or whoever's in your town, hit Control again, and it'll immediately bring up the disenchant area where you can throw in whatever you want, hit accept, and get the resources. Something else I want to mention is the salvage bench right here. This is something I never was doing the entire game until I realized I wanted some gem slots into my gear, and then I figured out I had nothing to do it. So the fastest way I figured out how to do that is you come over here to the vendors and you can just scan around for maybe some gear that has socketed gems in it. If it does, like this piece right here, we can buy this. Come over here to the salvage bench, hit the hammer, boom, we get one. You can do the same for quality items as well, and then we can use, once we get 10 of those, we can then use the item to put gem socket in our gear or increase the quality of our gear. Something I also want to mention is your gem colorization. So red is strength, blue is intelligence, and green is dexterity. You can see how many of each type of colored gem you can have. I didn't know this at the start, and I was very confused why I couldn't slot certain gems, and it was definitely bricking some of my builds. But once I figured out that strength, dex, and int can increase them, I'm able to now use whatever gem sockets I want. So if I want another strength gem, I would have to get 5 more attributes into strength to unlock that. Something else I did not know, if you go to your uncut gems here, you can actually, this is what it recommends you to get, but if you unclick this show recommended right here, it tells you everything that current spell can equip. I found this really useful since I was very confused, and it's a lot less confusing than all gems at the bottom here. If you just come over here to Firebolt, you hit show recommended, and it tells you whatever thing you can run. I think this is way more convenient than hitting all gems in my opinion. Just click this button at the bottom. Big help once I figured that one out. Something else you can do is you can grab your lesser jewel orbs and you can click on your important spells, right click here, and you can put another gem slot onto your frost bomb or whatever you want on your most used spells. The vendors, they reset their shops on level up, so every time you hit a level your shops will reset. You can come in here and check for some nice legendaries. They actually sell some pretty good stuff. That's why I ended up getting my new hands, my boots, and most of my gear actually just generally comes from checking the vendors every time I level up and praying to the gods that the RNG rolls in my favor and I can get lucky. You can check in all 3 towns or at the beginning, start, and end of the game. Next is refunding your points. You can refund at any point on the skill tree as long as it doesn't break the line. So you don't have to go all the way back and disenchant or respec every skill point. You only need to do whichever one you want. So if you want to do this one, you can just make it strength real quick, and that can prevent you from having to backtrack the whole way. Something I also want to mention is you can get these gem cutter prisms, and they will end up upgrading your skills. So I only have 2 right now, and my one already put on frostbolt here, so quality 5. And if I upgrade it again, it goes up to 10%. Big damage. So if you have those, I recommend picking those up and putting them on your most important skill. They increase your damage by quite a substantial amount. Now, something I didn't notice when I was very new is the importance of leveling up your skills. Like a level 8 skill does way less damage than like a level 9 or 10 skill. I had no idea about this when I first started playing, and this really like hurts my damage. I thought levels didn't mean too much, but once I started looking at the DPS increase / decrease, I noticed that I really needed to upgrade my important DPS skills as soon as possible. So that's something that really screwed me over as well. While in the early game, you can add whichever weapon set you want your weapon to only use. I just started using 2 weapons as well. So that's pretty cool. You can just click whichever checkmark you want and it'll only use that ability on that certain weapon, so you don't have to continuously weapon swap. Something else I didn't know is you could hold Alt here to look at stuff as well. If you are very confused about how stuff works, you can just hold Alt on your keyboard and it'll explain everything to you. This is super important, I think, as well. When you first don't understand what the heck is happening at all, this really helped me learn the game. Like what exposure does, cold damage and cold exposure, like what's the difference, and all that good stuff. Like if I want to look at fire here as well, like what does fire kind of do? What is projectiles, ignite, all this stuff. I think it's super useful. So if you're just new to the game, just hit Alt and look at your skills. It is quite a bit of information to take in, so do keep that in mind, but I think it's very useful to understand the game so you don't make as many mistakes. Next up is something to do with the map. These skulls here, if they are grayed out, that means you've killed the boss. If they are not grayed out, that means you haven't killed them. They also can have this plus sign next to them, which means they have a permanent type buff on them. This would have been very useful to know because sometimes I'm running around the zone looking a lot for a boss and I never actually find one, so I end up wasting a lot of time exploring the whole map. So knowing like which zones have bosses in them, so if I can like speed run through the zone quite a bit, I found that quite helpful, knowing which zone had bosses. Another thing you can do is you can hit control on your keyboard and it'll come right here and you can reset the zone if you want to farm an area. So a tip I wanted to go over was you can go over to these wells right here and you can end up filling your mana and your health potions. Very convenient after you come through the portal. If you guys are having trouble finding socketed gear, as you can see on this trivial mass, there'll be a dot right next to the name that will indicate that it has a gem socket, or allowing you to pick up that if you are just looking for gem socketed gear because you've been missing it just like me. And with that, I hope you guys did find the video helpful. It means a lot to me. Hit that like button, subscribe. I would love to know what your biggest mistake was, or something that you really wish you knew from playing from the start of the game. Make sure to leave that down in the comments below. I want to have a huge shout out to all my YouTube channel members and my Twitch subscribers for supporting me. Thank you guys so much for the support. It really does mean a lot to me. And with that, I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.